Do you truly understand the depth of what is happening right now behind closed doors in Parliament? In this video, we are about to reveal a scripted exchange in the House of Commons, a discussion that could alter the course of who stays in Canada. What if permanent residency, as we know it, could be cancelled, restricted, or controlled, and most people never saw it coming? What you're about to hear is a real exchange that questions the very basis of immigration policy, and it could be the wake-up call we've been waiting for. If you think this is just another debate, think again. It is a crucial turning point. Imagine a world where the right to stay in this country is no longer assured. In the next few minutes, you'll see exactly what is being debated, what questions are being asked, and why it could affect you even if you think it won't. If you turn away, you might never know what was hidden, what could change your perspective on Canada forever. Stay with us. This glimpse is just the beginning of a truth that could impact us all.
The Governor and Council to cancel, vary, suspend, or impose new conditions on immigration documents, including permanent resident visas, as we just heard, and permanent resident cards.
In Next You Will See, we enter a crucial and high-stakes discussion taking place in the House of Commons. Gigi Osler raises two vital questions. Why is the government bringing permanent residents into this policy? And what happens if their residency is cancelled? This is not just a formal debate. It is a life-altering shift. If this policy goes unchecked, it could strip individuals of their rights to stay in Canada, to work, and to build a future here. The implications are vast. This could affect families, community stability, and even public safety. If you think immigration policy is just administrative, think again. This is a battle for who has a future in Canada. What you need to understand. Permanent residents are being included in a policy aimed at filling labor shortages, but the ramifications go far beyond economics. This policy could be a test for larger government controls, a template for future actions that go beyond immigration, potentially affecting all Canadians. Watch closely. If you miss this, you may miss a turning point that could impact your life forever.
So I've got two questions. What are the government's reasons to include permanent residents, many of whom are coming to Canada or are in Canada already to fill labor shortages in important sectors? And then second question, in practical terms, for example, if a permanent resident card is cancelled, what implications would this have on their right to work in Canada or enter and exit?
What if the government is using permanent residents as a way to gain more control over who stays in Canada? And you are about to see how. In Next You Will Hear, Tara Lang says that including permanent residents in this bill was done for national interest, to protect public safety, prevent fraud, and respond to crises like the pandemic. But is this really about safety, or is it a way to give the government more power? As we break down her points, we see how a simple policy could mean big changes in how residency is granted or taken away. If you think it won't affect you, think again. This could shape the future of your safety and rights in Canada. What you need to understand. The government says this is for national safety, but it's very broad. Public safety could be used as a reason to limit individual rights. Fraud claims might be a cover for discretionary decisions. This could be a model for future emergencies, giving more power to the government in crisis.
So maybe the policy intent around including permanent residents and permanent resident visas very specifically. So again, these clauses, this part of the bill was for national interest, and Senator Dean did explain that it has been further defined about error, fraud, public safety, health. Yeah. So an example could be the pandemic.
What happens when the government has no control over who comes to Canada, and yet they still decide your future? Tara Lang reveals that during the pandemic, the government lost control over immigration applications. People kept applying even as the system shut down. IRCC couldn't keep up, and applications piled up, leaving many in limbo. This is more than a backlog. It's a wake-up call. When immigration systems fail, whose future is put at risk? If you think this was just a pandemic issue, think again. It shows a bigger weakness in our immigration system. What you need to understand. Immigration backlogs caused by pandemic. During the pandemic, applications flooded in, but the system had no capacity. Government had no processing capacity. IRCC was locked down and unable to keep up with the influx of applications. Applications piled up unchecked. Many applicants waited in limbo as the backlog grew, with no clear timeline for a response. No system to stop travel. People continued to apply and enter, even when the system couldn't handle them.
So we have no authorities to prevent people from applying or traveling to Canada. We cannot stop applications from coming in. So in the example of the pandemic, people were continuing to apply and come to Canada, and we had no capacity within IRCC to process because we were all in lockdown, etc. So in that example, all of our applications piled up, and then we had to deal with them after the fact.
What if a cyber attack could strip you of your status and the government could do it without warning? And next, you see how Tara Lang reveals that the government wants more power to stop fraud, even during crises. She explains that if there is evidence of a massive fraud or a cyber attack, the government could suspend a permanent residency visa. This is not just a safety measure, it's a massive shift in power. If you think it's just about fraud, think again. It could be used to target anyone at any time under the guise of a crisis. What you need to understand. Fraud controls could be expanded. The government is seeking broader authority to halt residency based on fraud or malfeasance. Cyber attacks could justify suspension. If a massive hack occurs, visas could be paused immediately while government investigates. Large-scale fraud is a test case. This could be a precedent for future crises, where rights are suspended under urgency. Your residency could be at risk. Even if you did nothing wrong, you could be caught in a wider sweep, leaving you in legal limbo.
The permanent resident visa itself is more a better ability to control fraud or situations where we think that there's evidence of some kind of large-scale malfeasance. So the minister just mentioned in my ear, like a cyber attack. There's a possibility, say we're hacked, and there's a number of visas that are issued improperly, and we learn of this. We can pause the validity of the permanent resident visa while we are examining this.
What if a simple PR card mix-up could cost you your right to stay in Canada? And next, you will hear Tara Lang discusses defective PR cards and permanent resident travel documents. She explains that when PR cards are fraudulent or defective, they often get sent to outdated addresses and returned to sender. In these cases, the government can cancel the card if they suspect fraud or error. This is a warning. If your documents are defective, you could be stripped of your residency without notice. If you think this only happens to others, think again. This could happen to you, and it could destroy your future in Canada. What you need to understand. Defective PR cards raise big risks. They often return to sender, indicating residency issues. Fraud is a major concern. When cards are defective, they may be part of a larger fraud scheme, leading to cancellation. Renewal process can fail. If the government can't find you, they might cancel the card based on the last address. You could lose status suddenly. Even if you have no fault, a mistake could cost you your residency.
I want to talk about PR cards and permanent resident travel documents. A good example is that we often have a lot of defective or fraudulent PR cards. And so we identify those when people are renewing or there's residency concerns and we can't find the person. We send the PR card to the person's last address. It keeps cutting back, return to sender. So in those situations, we could have the ability to, again, cancel PR cards that we believe are somehow defective or part of a fraud scheme.
What if the government can restrict your right to work without a court or warning? At last, Tara Lang explains that the government can pause someone's ability to work if it is done under an order in council. She says it would be clearly outlined, and it wouldn't be done without a good reason. But the risk remains. If a bigger crisis happens, your work and future could be suddenly at stake. If you trust that this won't hurt you, think again. It could be used as a tool to limit your rights when you least expect it. What you need to understand. Work rights could be suspended. The government can pause work permissions under special orders. This would be clearly defined. The order in council would outline how and why it's done. It would not be arbitrary. The government says it would only happen for a good reason, not randomly. Emergencies could trigger actions. Future crises might give the government a reason to pause rights rapidly.
And yes, you're absolutely right. They could have an impact on their ability to work, etc. But all of that would be covered under the order in council and would explain how operationally this would happen. But again, it wouldn't be without a good reason, and the intent is not to harm your average person in Canada.
Thank you very much.
We've just witnessed how policies in Parliament can reach far beyond what we expect. They can affect who stays, who works, and whose future in Canada is at risk. From fraud concerns to cyber threats, we have seen how easily residency and work rights could be suspended without a fair hearing. Tara Lang made it clear. If fraud or a cyber attack is suspected, the government has the ability to pause your rights under an order in council. Even though they say it would only be used for good reason, the fact is, it puts your life on a knife's edge. If you care about your future, your rights, and your place in Canada, you must stay informed, ask questions, and demand transparency. For the latest updates on immigration, Canada Current Affairs, and in-depth House of Commons breakdowns, subscribe to Canada Insight Network. We bring you the stories that can change your understanding, so you never miss the truth that matters.